Korea's military is on alert after North Korea launches a missile from a submarine. We're tracking all angles of this story from Seoul to Tokyo. And in the UK, President Obama opens up about his legacy as president with only months left in his final term. Plus, ISIS is taking responsibility for the brutal murder of a professor in Bangladesh, while the terror group says he was targeted. Hello, I'm Lynda Kinkade. Welcome to CNN Newsroom. Thanks for joining us. We begin with a new missile launch by North Korea, this time from a submarine. South Korean officials say it didn't go far, but they're not calling it a failure. One US official calls it provocative. Another says it means Pyongyang's ability to fire missiles from submarines is no longer a joke. Our Will Ripley was in Pyongyang last week. He's standing by for us now in Tokyo. But first to Paula Hancocks, who has the latest from South Korea's capital, Seoul. Paula, what else are you learning about this missile launch?
Well, Lynda, we know that North Korea has been working on this for some time now. We're hearing from the Joint Chiefs of Staff here in Seoul that there was a ballistic missile they believe was fired from a submarine. And they're also saying that they believe it flew for about 30 kilometers. Now, they say that for this kind of launch from a submarine to be considered a success, it has to fly for around 300 kilometers. So clearly we're far short of that. But South Korean officials are not calling this a failure. They're not using that word, and for fairly good reason, because every time North Korea carries out this kind of test, they are learning. It doesn't matter what the outcome is, they are learning from this. And of course, if this is in fact a ballistic missile from a submarine, as the South Korean military believes it might be, then it is very significant. One US official talking to us tells us just how worried Washington is, saying, quote, North Korea's sub-launch capability has gone from a joke to something very serious. The US is watching this very closely. So that just sums up how much of a concern this is. And of course, this isn't an isolated incident. 2016 has been incredibly busy, incredibly tense on the peninsula. Lynda.
Yeah, that is true. And just to you, Will, you recently were in Pyongyang. We know that firing ballistic missiles is a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Why is Pyongyang continuing to do this?
Well, there are probably several reasons. One, one of the most important political gatherings in North Korea in 35 years, the Workers' Party Congress. We believe it's just 2 weeks away, even though no official date has been announced. It will occur at some point in early May. And this is when the Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un is expected to consolidate his power, possibly reshuffle the Workers' Party leadership, giving him more control. And so these repeated, from the nuclear tests in January to the satellite launch in February to the failed missile launch last week to now this apparent submarine launch. All of these are ways that the Supreme Leader can project strength and show force ahead of this political gathering, a message both for his domestic audience, also the international community. And also, it's noteworthy that all of this is happening in spite of the United Nations' new heightened sanctions that are supposed to cripple the regime's ability to conduct these types of things. Even with the sanctions, there is a lot of speculation, including in South Korea at the government level, that North Korea may also be preparing a nuclear test very soon, possibly ahead of this Workers' Party Congress next month, just a couple of weeks from now, Lynda. So it just goes to show that North Korea continues to develop its military capabilities and send a very clear message internally and externally that they are not to be reckoned with. And you hear from U.S. officials and South Korean officials, they're looking at these advancements and taking them very seriously as a potential real threat in this region and around the world.
Absolutely. It is a major concern. Just back to Paula, what is the significance of this being a submarine missile test?
Well, this is harder to track and harder to predict than other launches. For example, a static missile launch from land. It would be far harder in a case of war to be able to see this coming effectively. But it is worth noting that in January, 38 North, which is a well-respected US website that follows the North very closely, said that they believe that they may have an operational submarine for this ballistic missile launch by 2020. So this is not something that we are seeing happen in the very near future. future. But of course, the fact that it may have been the first time that North Korea has managed to launch a ballistic missile from a submarine is keeping many officials very concerned. We are hearing the State Department spokesman saying that it's a clear violation of UN resolutions. And of course, we are hearing from officials unofficially around the world that they are watching this very closely, that they are concerned about this. It is just another development that North Korea has made. And as I say, even if it was considered a failure unofficially by South Korean officials, North Korea will have learned something from it.
Right. And just finally, back to Will, you talk about these sort of tests being a gain for the Supreme Leader and a show of strength. What's the perception from people within North Korea that you've spoken to after a test like this?
Well, it'll be interesting to see if North Korean state media announces this submarine launch, because you'll remember last year there were several submarine launches that were believed to have failed, but yet at one point state media put out those photos showing a missile very dramatically rising from beneath the sea, although there was a lot of experts who looked at the photos and thought that they were likely doctored in some way. And so if this is announced within North Korea, it will be announced as yet another national triumph, yet another show of strength by the Workers' Party, by the Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un. However, interestingly, when I was in the country last week and on the Day of the Sun, their most important holiday, there was that apparent failed missile launch. There was never a mention of it within the country. The state media never even acknowledged that it happened. And so what the people hear within North Korea, they hear about the success. There are models of the rocket that launched that satellite into orbit in February on display everywhere around Pyongyang, in their brand new science center, at the Kim Il-sung flower show that we were taken to. Of course, people are, the nuclear test, the apparent H-bomb test was widely celebrated. And so all of this is to tell the people of North Korea that their government is strong, in control, and ready to take on any perceived threat from the outside world, most specifically a threat from the United States, because North Korea tells its citizens over and over again that they live under the constant threat of invasion from the U.S. They serve years of mandatory service in the military. North Korea is one of the largest standing armies in the whole world. And so the military and the society are really intertwined. And this will be a matter of national pride if it is announced.
Okay, it is interesting that it hasn't been announced in the state media yet in North Korea, but we will be watching for that. Will Ripley in Tokyo and Paula Hancocks in Seoul, thank you both for staying up very late for us. We appreciate it.